Hello, good morning, whatever it is for me the morning of Space Wolf NDA release, 7 AM, and this is what I would call a dirty yellow. We've used pretty standard selection of colours on this, I would say. You've got to use a dirty yellow to start yellows off over black, and we started over a black base. Okay, we've then transitioned into this, and we actually had a little bit of deep burgundy-ish, like Baraknar, in the recesses. That's where some of the cool tints are coming from. But what if you want like super clean, super crisp? Where's the box? What if you want this? Look, I'd say that's maybe like a little bit of an egg yolky yellow, but it's a really bright one. How do you get it this bright? Well, simple answer, we're going to start this one from a white base. So this one we started dark and went up, and we started from a dark base. And this one we're going to start white and we're going to go down, and we're going to start from our highlights, or very close to our highlights. So let's jump in and see what's involved in that, and we'll get something super sharp, super kind of crisp and bright yellow compared to this dirty yellow. I do really like this actually, and I think next to a dirty blue, this looks outstanding. What we're going to be showing you is how to get that super crisp, bright one. So yeah, if you want to see the dirty one, let me know. Now, I wouldn't normally worry about contamination, but we're going for really bright, crisp yellow, and I screwed this up on the other one actually, so I'm going to go change my water. Before we start, did any of you notice that my palette has literally been used to test this? So I quickly put some, whatever it was, Primrose Grey on it, so I've got Space Wolf-like colours, and then my testing that I did for working out this shoulder pad, I did on the right colour, and I did it on a surface that's been primed, so it was an exactly accurate test. That's a really good place to do it. You can test on paper. All testing is better than no testing, but I think this is a really good way to test, and it's always there. It's literally behind my model, so if I'm making like a comparison on colour, it's right behind it, and that is super, super helpful. It's like having your references close by if you're using a picture or something like that. It's just really, really good logic. So we're going to get our base coat down. We're going to be going with some bright colours, so let's just slap them down. You could layer it, you could smush it with your dry brush, whatever you want to do. All right, going for a Series D extra large. You could use a large or medium plus if you feel more comfortable with that. I'm going to start with the big one though. Notice, by the way, how worn this brush is and what a beautiful shape it's worn into. That's where the good brushes kind of win out. So this one's a couple of years old. I'm a good boy, so it still looks pretty clean. Looks cleaner than my newer one actually. But yeah, it's literally worn down into the perfect shape, especially for this type of task, because we're going to be getting some tip-to-tip action. So the two domes are going to contact in a really small area, and that's really useful if we want to be able to get highlights out of probably a bigger brush than people would expect. We're going to get little stippled kind of lighter sections towards the top of the pad, and that's really easy when you've got two rounded things because their contact point is pretty small. Base coat wise, this should pretty much go down in one, even though it's a weak yellow. Yeah, I'll give it 2 goes because why not? I always forget the underside of shoulder pads. Okay, you gotta let it dry fully now. This is the bit that people screw up with base coating the most often. It's not like how thick or thin your paint is, it's just the patience to let this 100% dry before the second application. Although, who needs patience when you've got a hairdryer? Perhaps remove that little blob that's got there in priming somehow. There might end up being a chip in the shoulder pad on that location. Okay, so time for our dirty yellows to come out. Could actually use an orange here. Mix it with your previous yellow a bit, something like that. It's up to you exactly what approach you want to take. My base coat didn't go super smooth, and that's because it's gone over white primer. I've used white scar. Maybe I could have used grays here because physically it's kind of less fluffy. But it's not, I don't think it's major. Not for army painting at least. So now we're going to be stippling our shadows in. So I'm going to do this quite wet at the beginning, and that's just wet at the tip of the brush, not inside the brush. Still capable of putting dots down really well. And we're going to start at the bottom, because if what we're doing is too heavy, then it doesn't matter, because that's going to be the darkest bit anyway. In fact, I think it's the opposite, it's too light, but that's okay. Give it a couple of goes, and I'll just build it up. This is to assess it. You know, obviously you might want to go faster than this, but you're better off giving it a couple of goes to see if it builds up better than you expect, rather than just jumping in and going too far. Okay, so repetition is repetition. Actually, it's building up okay. I went back for a second dib, and because I had less of my previous color in my brush, I actually went a little bit too strong. So it's pretty much pure Agrellan. So all we've got at this point is dilution in the Agrellan. It's not like it's mixed with our flash kits. Like I said at the beginning, because it's a dome or a sphere, it's quite easy for us to contact just a small point of it. Your main worry here, and I've actually screwed this up already, is let it dry. I was saying it in base coating, but let it dry fully. Tilt it around. It's always easy for me to get a good angle on getting information from this because I've got an egg. Tilt it around and just look. If it's still reflecting back like it's not dried, it's not dried. Don't rush it. There is no plus side to rushing, I promise. So just building this up bit by bit. And if you decide that you want to smoothen your blend, what you do is you make sure your dampening pad is topped up. Test it first. Take some water, agitate around in the top of your brush, and now we are stippling a glaze. I'll show it on my egg where it's black. You'll see here, these little speckles. We're now putting down speckles of very soft Agrellan Sunset, and that is going to smooth the transition between this band of color and that band of color. You can do this as much or as little as you like. Do remember, I used a small one here and it's actually pointing the wrong way. I wonder if anyone's going to correct me. It's a Spaceballs tutorial, so the chances of people correcting me are higher than normal. Just Space Marines in general, that is. So we've got a great big transfer in the middle here, or a smallish one. We're actually going to put a bigger one, a full-size one, in the middle of this one of these big boys. So it doesn't matter if stuff's perfect, because we're going to obscure it with a very hard to not look at detail that's in black over a yellow base. My first attempt with one of those is there, by the way, that little smear. Maybe I'll put a picture up now. Sadly, transfers don't always go right. Okay, while I was talking, that layer is dried. So I'm just going to do this a couple of times to smoothen the transition in general, and then we're going to do a brave little darker bit at the bottom, and then we're going to rock on. We'll do the transfer, and then our weathering is going to be all over, including while the transfer is down. That's quite important because it'll just tie it into this and make it look like it's part of it rather than a sticker on top of it. Oops. Hopefully this gives you an idea of the type of, you know, this one looked yellow when it was on its own. No, that's yellow, right? So this is how much control you've got over how your stuff is by what base coat you go from and whether you go dark to light or light to dark. Just as a note, by the way, the smoothing process where I was stippling a transition, you could stipple your lighter or your darker there. It really doesn't matter. So whichever one's weaker, which in this situation could have been the flash kits, definitely, because it is a weaker color, you'll probably have an easier time doing something soft using a weaker paint. So that's how you'd make the decision which one of those was the best choice. So yeah, flash kits, we could have stippled on that band, where the color transitions with a diluted mix of it, it would have really softly blended it together. Okay, so transfer tips, if anyone needs them. If you don't, just skip this section. Now we've got quite a big transfer here, and generally speaking, what you want to do is cut as close to the transfer as possible, so that the frame around it that's from the transfer paper is less obvious. But because this is a big one, and I think big ones can be harder than small ones in a lot of ways, I'm going to actually try and cut around it with slightly rounded edges, and anywhere that sticks out as a spike, like an ear, I'm not going to have it coming out like its own little peninsula from the transfer. The reason for that is something I think people don't think about too much. If it's just sticking out on its own, it's weaker and it's more likely to curl. And if a transfer curls under itself, sometimes there's no going back. There's only 5 of these and I already ruined one. So as it stands, yeah, there's you know, there's a good reason to take care with each transfer, especially if you need to use each of them on your 5 dudes. Okay, I always use the lid of my dampening pad because it's white, so it's really easy to see how things are going. Now I've seen some people use decal medium at this stage. I'm just going to put water in it from my paint pot with my brush. Just completely saturating it from below. Alright, once you think it's ready, everything out, and then I always try and get my brush like curled under the biggest part of it. I use this transfer sheet here to work out which way is meant to be up. That's pretty easy. It's like the top of the head is level. There we're going to place it on. Now my rules with transfer is a little bit like doing eyes. Like if it's good enough, it's good enough. So if it's not perfectly on center, that's okay. If I think it's all right, it's nearly all right. It needs shifting over a bit. Okay. Piece of cloth or tissue at this point, something soft, and we just press it down, press it into it. Okay, you think it's dry? It's not. Unless you've used a hairdryer, just go away, make a coffee, have a shower. That's literally what I'm going to do. Come back in 15 minutes when it is 100% dry. Do that twice if you're using decal medium, put your decal medium all over, or do it 3 times if you're using water. Okay, we made a coffee, but we didn't have a shower yet because I was excited about finishing my cool shoulder pad, and that's exactly the type of thing you need to avoid. I've cheated because I have a hairdryer, so if you have one, you can speed up time by doing that, but just fight those micro impatiences. It really is super important. Just remember that you want your thing to look good, not to immediately see transformation happening before your eyes. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to lock that in with an all-over process, and for that I'm just going to use a little wash. All of this top to bottom, lighter on the top, to keep it kind of nice and bright. It's fine if this is diluted with water. It's more important that you kind of, this is like a varnish step almost. Oh, now I've got a dirty brush. Right, there we go. We might have just, okay, I've licked that off. And we'll go again with a clean brush. All right, take 2. Like I said the first time around, it's more important that this is all over than that it's like perfect or anything. Really thin on top. Now to be a little bit braver, exactly the same thing, we're going to dilute it with water again to soften it. Test it somewhere first, and we're just going to do it at the very bottom. Pushing towards the bottom. The little tab, you can have a little bit more in. Again, this is a testing, learning step. Don't be impatient. Assess how it's looking. And choose to do a little bit of kind of wash Texture Technique shading, so you can let it dab into that tab a bit. But we're just repeating it now. And exactly the way that we were repeating our stippling to soften it, you can repeat it further to soften it here. I'm keeping it pretty low though. Secret tricks, I'm now going to do it just over where the transfer is pretty much. This is going to slightly change the color, but not very much because it's black, but it's just to put several layers over that still slightly shiny finish and make it look more like the surrounding paint. We've mixed Haviland and Flash Kits now, and this is the type of thing I far prefer to do off camera, but we're going to do some light scratches. Take a run up. Need a bit more on my brush and a bit more ready to leave with dilution. Okay, so we have an interesting situation here. I have made a mistake. Around here, that's just a bit too fat, and this is because I wasn't using my current favorite brush for highlighting, and also I was on camera, which makes it a little bit harder. Normally, I would do edge highlighting like next to my nose, and I'd be, breathing really steadily and stuff like that. So it is harder, and if you're doing any delicate techniques, you got to set yourself up for success rather than failure. So I set myself up for failure, and it failed. Try and set up my current favorite 4 that I'm used to highlighting and doing scratches with up and see if I can do a better job, and then we'll fix the other mistakes. So I'll make sure we don't have too much paint on the brush. We will test. Testing is always important. There is always time to test. Right, we need enough paint leaving. There we go. Okay, so that's what we should have done. I should have got my favorite brush. And I shouldn't have done 2 strokes there, I should have just done 1. So don't do as I do, do as I say. Scratches are of course optional. Right, and then what else can we do? I put a little dot where we had that issue from the primer, and I'm just going to do a little highlight underneath it. We need to go a bit brighter than that. Okay, so how are we going to fix our mistake? Pretty easy, really. We're going to glaze over it. Now the yellow will disappear really easily just by putting Reichland. Right. Do that a couple of times, and we'll just end up with the bottom being slightly darker than it was. If I do it here, I'm going to obscure my other scratches, so I probably don't want to, but I'd much rather that things look good overall and I have to redo some scratches, even if it ends up a little bit darker than I was intending. So we're just going to darken it up, and then I'll redo my scratches. Okay, while we're on the subject of scratches, we have a really good towel video where I go kind of slightly more in depth on how to do the one line followed by the other line. If you are looking to do scratches, particularly on edges, there's some tricks where you don't have to be an incredible painter to get a really incredible end result. And the worry of getting the second line steady is kind of fixed by it as well. On the subject of which, do a test. And what I'm going to try and do a line inside that brown line. Done an all right job, but not perfect. It's quite hard to fix. That's better. Just never rewarded for doing the second one, are you? Okay, that'll do. Looking all right. Dark line, get some Byron, some Haviland. And now what I want to do is, oh, that's why it's wrong. I'm going to do my dark line on top, not below. All right, okay. There we go. Now it works. Maybe I should have made myself 2 cups of coffee this morning. Alright, they've turned out alright. Not the best on the edge highlights, but we've got a really good video where I do them properly elsewhere. This is probably a good idea of, you know, mini painting doesn't always go perfectly. But look at the difference in the warmth and the vibrancy between those two. That's what we need to be covering, right? So white base to start, light to dark, rather than dark base to start, dark to light. Huge difference. If you want to tint this warmer, you could do that with oranges. We've got an excellent video on glazing that you could watch, and the video on scratches is a really, really good one too, because the towel one turned out excellently. Final step, if you do not have a matte varnish, but you want to shine down your transfer completely in like one go, you can use contrast medium, which is actually really matte. It's not very durable, so it won't look like a varnish in that sense. But in terms of changing the finish of your transfer, it will pretty much in one coat do the job. You have to do the entire area so everything matches. Once it started drying, don't disturb it, just let it go. Do that twice. Second time doesn't have to be all over. Just mainly hit the transfer. There we have it. The black's going to show it up more readily, but yeah, you can do that a couple of times, or just to taste. I wouldn't put down a thick coat. You're better off just doing 3 in a row and drying them between or something like that. You can blow on them, they'll dry pretty fast, but that will really help kind of set everything even more than the shade step, and it won't tint the color too much either. If you do want to edge highlight, same mix as our scratches mix, and just get that 45-degree angle. Good brush. And I try and do it in 1. You can do 2 if you want, but it's just twice the opportunity for things to go wrong often. Run round, brace steadily, and just stick with that 45 degrees. If this is your edge, your brush is at that angle. Simple as that. Get it in a couple of goes. You could add like a bone or something like that for the very, very top, if it's not showing up over your brightest yellow, but you can do that, and then you just do your scratches immediately afterwards. And they look really good going for an edge highlight as well. Again, that's covered in the towel video. There we go. Always magic, isn't it?